Right then, I've done about 2,000 miles on this bike since I bought it earlier this year. So about time I gave you a little update. Tell you what I think about the bike so far. Hi folks, Ricky Tang here. And yeah, update time on my S1000 XR. So I think I had just over 5,000 miles on the clock when I bought it. Can't quite remember, so I'll have to put it on the screen to be certain, but I think it was. So yeah, 2,000 miles done. Now I'm at 7,200 miles. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll break it down into pros and cons, and then any other business, any other experiences I've had with the bike so far. Pros. Now it boils down, I think, to the chassis, the riding position, ergonomics, the big wide handlebars, and they are big and wide, and the wide bars, and I think in conjunction with the forged wheels on this M Sport model or M package model, makes it really good to throw around the bends. It's got light handling. It's easy to change direction a little bit or change your line a little bit mid-corner. It just doesn't fight you. It does feel quite neutral in its handling. It'll do what you want it to do, it seems. So I like the handling, I like the chassis, I like the riding position. It's all good. The next thing is the engine. 160 plus horsepower, 4-cylinder, 1000cc bike. It's got an engine on it. Now I still can't help sometimes riding it or trying to treat it like it's a big twin. My previous bike was a BMW R1250R, as you may know, and that bike was good at accelerating from low revs because it had a massive engine and lots of torque. This bike doesn't quite do that, so sometimes I'm in a higher gear at low revs and I twist the throttle to accelerate, and I hit the throttle stop and the bike's still accelerating, but that's my fault. I'm not using the appropriate gear. I'm not riding the bike properly. But that's okay, I am learning. It's taken a couple of thousand miles, but I am using more appropriate gears more of the time nowadays. And what I am finding is the mid-range, around about 6,000 RPM mark, that is strong. That does feel strong for the road. You've got really, well, I've got no complaints about its performance. At lower revs, as long as you're progressive with the throttle and don't do that and hit the stop and get annoyed, low rev throttle response and acceleration is also fine. Nothing wrong with it. But it's a 4-cylinder bike whose, you know, performance is at the top end. And I had the pleasure of exploring the top end recently on a track day at Bedford Autodrome. Let's just say that on the track day there's some other advantages of this bike which really shone through for me from my previous riding experience. The last two big bikes I owned were nakeds, the R1250R and the S1000 single R. On the track day it was great to accelerate while hiding behind a fairing. So I can tuck in, and accelerating up to speed is so much easier on a fair bike. I know I'm stating the obvious here, but yeah, you don't have to fight the wind, or at least not anywhere near as much as you do on a naked bike. So accelerating, getting up to speed and maintaining the speed on the track day was awesome. And you can almost say, because I had a fairing to hide behind, the acceleration didn't feel quite so exhilarating. It got the job done. It accelerated bloody fast, but it did everything well within its capabilities. But it was my first track day in about a year, so I was definitely rather ring rusty. I did okay, the bike did very well. There are times at the track where I kind of outbrake myself a little bit. Didn't go off the track anywhere near, but I missed many apexes. So being hard on the brakes and being leant over and turning it in, no complaints on the bike at all. So far then, I like the handling, I like the ergonomics, I like the engine, and I like the electronics. One thing also I quite like compared to my R1250R is on the dash you can put it in sport mode. And yes, I got the 2 other displays now, but the great thing I found is that if I turn the bike off and on again, it actually comes back on with the sport display showing. It doesn't reset back to the normal speedo. I'm pretty sure the bike does that as standard, and there's nothing that I've done to the bike. However, I did almost screw up the dash with the GS911 diagnostic device. I've got that permanently under the seat, and what I managed to do while playing around with the GS911 is delete all 3 of those sport displays. Somehow I removed them from the options. I was scared. I thought I was going to have to take the bike back to the shop, have a grown-up fix it for me, but luckily with the GS911 I managed to basically re-enable them again. So maybe it's something I've done to the dash that now means that it stays on after a power cycle, but I don't think so. I get the feeling BMW listened and they updated the electronics to make the dash stay on as standard. Really do appreciate that, especially at the track day. I didn't have to remember to switch that back onto the sport display like I did with my previous BMW. Another thing I'm going to mark up in the good list, I think it's gonna appear in both lists, and it's the seat. As you may know, it's kind of a weird seat. It cups you, kind of holds you into place. I am finding that a couple of hours in the saddle really isn't a problem, because of the shape of the seat means it won't let you shuffle around, won't let you move back or forth to any great degree. Now for me, I can move back and forth a little bit, so if I am getting uncomfortable, there is a little bit of scope to shuffle around and give your bottom a bit of relief. But here's the other thing, you're not going to catch all this. Something I do like is that because it's adventure styled, you can stand up. So I really like the fact I can stand up on this bike if I have to. Not for long. It's not ideal. You are a bit leant over the front end, but the fact that you can is really quite nice. Another thing I like is basically the drive chain. Now 2,000 miles, I didn't mean the drive chain specifically, I mean the transmission, but starting with the chain, I've got the M Endurance chain on the bike, and in 2,000 miles I haven't had to adjust it, but I am oiling it. It was originally marketed as zero maintenance, that chain, and BMW certainly quickly changed their tune when the chain started wearing out and started stretching. So I am oiling it, but I haven't had to adjust it yet, which is nice because I'm not a fan of chains basically. If all bikes could do away with chains, I'd be a happy man. But drive chain, transmission, rarely any snatch, no abruptness on the throttle or off the throttle, picks up pretty smoothly most of the time. Occasionally you can kind of confuse it and bring the throttle on, there'll be a little bit of a jerk, but it's rare. What have I missed? Anything? Seats, no, I talked about the seats. I don't take pillions, so I can't comment on the passenger seat. Oh, foot peg, I talked about ergonomics as well, but specifically legs. Yeah, I've got some good distance between the pegs and the seat, so my legs aren't cramped at all. I don't know if you want to see. Yeah, tucked back a little bit, but not a lot. So overall, most of the time, I'm really enjoying this bike. But there are some cons. Starting with the seat. This bike, my plan for this bike was definitely for it to be an all-rounder. My next bike, whatever it was going to be, and turned out to be this. So for me, all-rounder means it can do long distances with luggage, it can tour, but it can also go on a track day and not embarrass itself or tie itself in knots. And for me, this is almost ideal for that sort of thing. Maybe at the track day I could do with a more sporty riding position, you know, lower handlebars further forward, but at my skill level, would I really benefit from that? Probably not. So it's not the perfect bike at the track because of its riding position. You kind of got your arms out, it's not really natural. But then again, they're racing baggers in America, so who am I to say what's right and what's wrong? Anyway, the seat. I went off the subject a little bit there. Now, at the track, I'm not very good at hanging off a bike. I want to get better at hanging off going around corners because it's the right thing to do. And this bike makes it even harder to hang off or learn how to hang off or get comfortable with it. Because when you try to hang off, you put your bum crack right on the edge of this kind of weirdly designed seat, and it takes your attention away from the looming corner that's coming up to you at high speed. It's distracting. The seat's distracting on the track, for me anyway, so far. Hopefully I'll get used to it. I'll figure it out. At the track day, there were photos taken because it's a no limits track day, so you had a photographer on site taking pictures around the track, and I don't want to save or buy any one of those pictures because I just look like an old man going around a track. There's no hanging off. Yeah, people on sports bikes, bum off the seat, knee down, and then there's me going around the same corner, knees on the tank, basically sitting upright. Is it the bike's fault? No. You could argue I've bought the wrong bike for the track, but it is what I've got. It's what I've chosen. What else isn't great? Suspension. Now, when I first bought the bike and I did my first little video about it, I did mention that I had the suspension damping mode, the dynamic ESA. It was on road mode. You got two choices, road or dynamic. And I was saying at the time, road mode is my default. The jury is out on whether dynamic mode is too stiff for the road. Well, now I've got used to the bike, and I don't know, I'm riding a bit faster than I did at the beginning of my ownership experience. A bit more comfortable with the bike. I'm finding road damping, it is too bouncy. It's too soft. And that road mode is kind of, you know, not adjustable to any degree at all. You can't further edit them like you can on maybe more expensive BMWs or higher spec BMWs. So it means that most of the time now I'm on dynamic damping mode. So dynamic mode does tighten the bike up nicely. I like it, but the problem with dynamic mode, well, it's not a problem with the bike, it's a problem with the roads. So in the UK, a lot of the roads are quite rubbish. On rougher roads, the riding is a little uncomfortable. Makes you want to switch back to road damping, but if I'm making a bit of progress, I'm going quite quick on the back roads, road damping is a bit too uncontrolled, a bit too soft and floaty. Yeah, so road damping, it's a shame you haven't got more granular adjustment of the damping on the bike. Dynamic, by the way, yeah, when you are flying down the road, and when I was at the track, very impressed with kind of how stable and how composed the bike remained, with a bit of a numpty on the top, doing his best to go fast. Cons, sorry, yes, there aren't that many. The other thing is vibration. Yes, the old elephant in the room. So yeah, this bike's got a bit of a reputation for vibration, intonation. I find that if I keep the revs low for quite a long period of time, maybe between them, I don't know, 3,000 and 5,000 RPM, a bit like this really. So maybe 3,000 and 5,000 RPM in town and lower gears, or 3,000 to 5,000 RPM here, cruising on an A road. My right hand and the right bar suffers from vibration quite a bit. It's not immediate, but after an hour of riding, if you take your hand off the handlebar, you know, use cruise control, which is very good by the way, use cruise control to take your hand off the bar, then you suddenly get that kind of cold feeling in your hand, after a minute or so, when the blood starts coming back in, and then you get that tingly feeling as it all starts to come back to life again. But I found if I do more sporty riding, maybe varying the revs more often, but generally keeping it at higher revs, vibration isn't a problem really. Doesn't seem to affect me much. And for whatever reason, my left hand doesn't seem to suffer from vibration. My feet don't seem to suffer. Bum doesn't seem to suffer. At the tank genital intersection area, there can be a bit of vibration there now and again, which can make the old chap tingle a little bit sometimes, but you shuffle around a little bit, then that goes away. But having said that, despite me saying the vibration generally overall isn't as bad as I feared, this bike still vibrates a hell of a lot. Yeah, so in the lead up for the track day at Bedford, I was trying to mount cameras all over in different spots on the bike to try and get some good footage at the track. One of the places I decided on was on the front screen. So what I did was replace one of the bolts holding the screen on with a little adapter bolt that let me essentially mount a camera to the front. So I had a camera right on the front on the windscreen there, facing forward. But on my test rides on the road, I found the camera kept stopping, and I couldn't figure out why. Even with full power, well, even being powered by a power bank, the camera was still stopping while I was riding around. And eventually I got an SD card error warning, so I had trouble recording video to the card. I didn't know what it was, I couldn't work out what it was, but then at some point I was riding along, put on cruise control, and I actually felt the bolts at the front here, and the vibration on the screen and on the bolts is absolutely massive. So much vibration. Yes, this bike vibrates a lot, and BMW must have put a lot of work into making the human touch points less of a problem for vibration. For instance, the handlebars are rubber damped. Obviously I've got rubber on the pegs as well, but there are some other parts of the bike that get really affected by vibration. And the front of the screen wasn't the only problem when I was trying to mount cameras onto the bike. I also tried to mount cameras on my shad pannier brackets. I did that at the track, and again I'd do a session at the track, get back in afterwards to find that the camera switched itself off, and then I realised, yeah, there's a lot of vibration in the shad pannier brackets. Not only that, I tried mounting the cameras on the passenger rails as well, the passenger handles, and still the camera stopped. And then I tried mounting a camera, still at the track day this is, on the pillion peg bracket that also had the exhaust hanging off it. Big mistake. Camera wouldn't record there either, or wouldn't keep recording. I did finally put a camera on the other pillion peg bracket on the left hand side as you're sitting on the bike, and that did manage to record a whole session, a whole 20-minute session without stopping. So I worked out by trial and error basically that this bike vibrates in many places. So yeah, for someone who likes mounting cameras on a bike, that's quite a downside. It limits where I can put cameras. Bit annoying, that.
BMW S1000 XRs. You do have to keep an eye on your bolts. Just noticed that. Something feels up. Oh, ooh, wow. Look at the state of that.
Oh, there's something I haven't mentioned. Heat from this bike. The fan does come on quite often on this bike, and when it does, especially if I'm going slow speeds or at a standstill, you do get a fair bit of heat hitting your left calf, lower left leg. and a reasonable amount of heat rises, especially if you're at a standstill, comes up and wafts into your face as well when you're stopped. But I don't feel it, I don't think it was as bad as my S1000 single R for some reason. Bodywork's different, maybe, but that kicked out quite a bit of heat onto my left leg. Same place, but it was worse than this bike. That was my second generation S1000R from about 2019. It's manageable, basically. It's there. You do get a bit of heat hitting you every so often, but not in an unbearable way. Oh, one more downside to this bike. Its weight. Now, I've been extolling the virtues of this bike's handling when I'm riding. All those virtues disappear when I'm pushing the bike around in the back garden with the engine not running. Pushing it on slight inclines and declines shows that this bike is rather top heavy. I have to put my hip into it quite often and lean against the bike while I'm pushing it around. Try and keep it stable, minimize the risk of toppling over. So it's a shame. But again, bikes are a compromise. I didn't have that issue with my BMW Boxer. That centre of gravity was low down. This is quicker at changing in direction at speed, but when pushing the bike around dead weight, it feels like a bit of a lump. Having said that, if I was 6 inches taller and stronger and weighed more, it wouldn't be an issue. So it's all relative to who you are. Any other cons? Let me think. No. Oh yes, I have got a con. One more. It's a big one. The screen. This is the second screen I've had on this bike. The bike came with, because it's the M package bike, it came with a shorter sports screen, which was pretty rubbish. It was noisy, there was a lot of turbulence, it wasn't a very good screen. And then I fitted a flip up like this on top of that sports screen, and it didn't make any appreciable difference. So the sports screen was rubbish for me. Then I bought this screen, which is actually, I think, a power bronze screen, a replica of the standard XR screen. Without the flip up, it was also rubbish. I was so annoyed. For me, in this high position or the low position before the flip up, still rubbish, still too noisy, or created too much turbulence. I couldn't believe it. Now I've got two types of flip up. This is one of them. This is the cheaper one, which tends to move by itself. And I've got another one with kind of the ones that come with like a alley bracket in the middle of the screen. That one's rubbish. For some reason, I can't get a good solution with that other flip-up screen. So this is the best solution I've found, putting this flip-up on top of the standard screen, and it's still not ideal. You still get a bit of turbulence pulling your head around, but it's not too noisy in the high position. In the low position, even now at 50 miles an hour, it's quite noisy. And I do wear earplugs all the time. So yeah, I am disappointed about the screen, probably more than any other aspect of the bike. I was expecting this sports tourer to be able to, you know, keep me in a nice bubble of calm air when traveling down the motorway or traveling at speed, and it just doesn't. Should have bought a GS. But then the GS, like my R1250R before it with the same engine, hasn't got the top end. Every bike is a compromise, and while I am missing the mid-range and the low RPM performance of my R1250, I love the top end. Yeah, one of the reasons I bought this bike was so that it'll be, well, great handling and not a challenge to ride on the road, but on the track you get to utilize that top end power and you get to go really fast. That's the thing I was missing from the Boxer Twin, the top end rush. And the other thing about this bike is when you decide that you want to be a bit of a hooligan and do naughty things, this bike is incredible. So quick at the top end, and again so composed about it. It's got a steering damper on top of the you know, big chunky front forks and stiff chassis, which is based on the S1000 RR. It lets you get away with murder. In other news, what else do you want to know about? Economy. I've only got the computer to go on. Oh, I've got a funny story there. It's averaging at the moment 48 miles per gallon on this tank of fuel, but I'm going rather slow. Can't give you the long term because the long term average has been kind of slightly spoilt by the track day, where I think on that day I was probably doing mid to low 20s miles per gallon, but I was at a track day. This bike's got a 20 litre fuel tank, which includes 4 litres of reserve. So in the old school method of calculating it, when you had a fuel tap, I've only got a 16 litre fuel tank with 4 litres of reserve. And if I remember rightly, I think I've done 200 miles before panicking, really panicking and finding a fuel stop. But on one occasion I mistakenly ran the tank till it showed 0 miles range. I was out for a ride and I actually had the camera, I think as a camera, slightly obscuring the dash, and I'd earlier dismissed the low fuel warning that told me that I was on reserve, and then I forgot about it. So then I suddenly remembered with about 3 miles range left on the tank, and I was nowhere near a petrol station. I'll do a long story short thing here. I'll start to basically putting a search for a petrol station into Google Maps. The first petrol station was shut because it was a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and so I did about 15 miles riding very slowly in high gears at low revs with 0 miles range. And I thought it was going to stop at any moment, but I did get to a petrol station. Like I said earlier, this bike holds 20 litres. When I brimmed the tank, and I put 20.5 litres into the tank. I put more fuel in than it claims to hold. So in summary, so far I'm really liking the bike. It goes slow, easily. You can be nice and boring, and the bike's easy to ride, non-threatening. And on faster roads, you'll be using that dynamic suspension, and the whole plot tightens up nicely, and it's easy to throw around because it's kind of got the big bars and the light wheels, so no issues riding faster on the road. And it's got great brakes. Oh, specifically front brakes, fantastic in terms of power, strength and confidence in the brakes, not to mention lean sensitive ABS as well. Very powerful front brakes, very pleased with them. Back brake as well is actually surprisingly strong. I'm quite happy with the power of the back brake. What I have found though is because the brakes are linked, front and back brake, and I do tend to use both brakes on the road quite often, I find if I'm braking hard on the front and I'm using the rear, you can feel, I think, the ABS in the rear kind of moving the lever up and down while it's saying, oh, I think the back brake's about to lock up, I'll let off the pressure, then I'll reapply it. Oh, I think the back brake's about to lock up again, I'll let the pressure off, reapply it. So when you're braking hard with both brakes, the rear brake pedal's kind of moving up and down against your foot. Bit of a weird sensation. But in isolation, using one at a time, both brakes are fine. I love hill hold. That's also one of my favourite things about the bike. And the hill hold's great, even on just going to a set of traffic lights on a slight decline or an incline. Bit of hill hold, and you're just much more steady. One thing I hadn't mentioned actually yet, one thing I still haven't mentioned, is that this is a low suspension version. And I was worried that I was going to grind something out at the track. Oh, actually, yeah. So, at the track, I did get the right foot peg feeler down. It's got a hero blob on the end of the right foot peg. Got that down quite easily. Now, it's only at the track I realised that the left hero blob is not there. I don't know when it went. It might not have been there since the day I bought it. But I did touch the left foot peg down at the track without the hero blob. But I didn't get the exhaust down. I was worried about that with that big catalytic converter underneath. When I'm leant over, maybe going around bends with the suspension loaded up, I was worried that I might ground out some of the exhaust, but that was not an issue at all. Didn't touch the exhaust down. Oh, quick shifter, up and down quick shifter. Love it. Yeah, it's really good. Much better than my 1250R Boxer, especially in the first couple of gears. That was quite agricultural, my old BMW, going through the gears, especially the first 2 or 3. But even here at 2,500 RPM, I can still go up and down the gearbox with the quick shifter, and it doesn't really complain. So that's it, I think, in summary. Biggest pros about the bike: handling and the engine. Biggest cons: vibration and the screen. I think that about sums it up. Very happy to be owning this bike. Very happy indeed. But I'm still getting used to it. Even after 2,000 miles, I think I'm still bedding myself in. And I think it's the seat that just makes life a little bit difficult. I do ride other bikes with normal seats, so every time I get back on this bike, it's a bit of an adjustment. It doesn't feel natural. Shame about the design, really. I know for 2024 they've changed the seat. I haven't been on a 2024 model yet, but when I bought this bike, I was looking to buy it for cash, and I couldn't find an extra £5,000 or so. Well, probably would have been more for an equivalent M Sport 2024 model with forged wheels. I wanted these wheels and I wanted this look, and the best way of doing that was to get a second-hand bike, which I did.
Hello there. Right, I just thought I'd show you the bike quickly. Might be a bit grubby, apologise for that. I'm just thinking, yeah, just want to show you what, if anything, I've added to the bike. So, looking at the obvious stuff. Shad luggage. I've got shad panniers at home. I've had them for a few years. So, I bought the shad rack for the bike. Now, the bike is ready to accept BMW luggage, but I didn't have the money to buy the BMW luggage. It's like £800 or something, somewhere between £600 and £800, and yeah, just didn't have the cash for that. The brackets were about 150 because I already had the panniers, so that was kind of a no-brainer, although I don't like the style of them, and I can't mount cameras to them because it vibrates too much. But yeah, I'd rather have the BMW luggage, so one day, that is my plan. Moving forward, I've got EvoTech crash bungs, which I did make a video about. I just haven't actually edited it and uploaded it, so that will come at some point. Nothing going on at the front apart from my efforts to try and sort the screen out and wind noise. I've just been told actually that there's a different screen. Well, there's lots of screens you can get, but apparently this is not the same height as the standard BMW XR screen. That standard XR screen I think is wider and taller than even this one, so looks like I'm going to be spending some more money. Down here where I'm about to kick, I've just mounted a ball mount through the hollow spindle so I can put a camera there for track days. So I've done a track day, had a camera on there, I think it worked out well. And aside from that, I don't think there's much else really. I think the only thing I've really done, and again I've got some video about this I need to sort out and get uploaded, is I've made my, oh you can't see it very well, I've made my own bracket to actually mount a Denali B6 light between the indicators, because this bike stupidly doesn't come with a proper rear light. That's all the stuff. Oh, apart from I suppose Givy top rack, SW Motec tank ring, yeah, that's it.
I've got another track day lined up at the end of August at Donington, and at the end of September, last couple of weeks of September, I do plan to go to Europe and do a bit of riding on this bike, all packed up with luggage. So, all-rounder, that's what I wanted, and I think that's what I've got. Any questions about the bike? Let me know in the comments. hopefully you'll find this video interesting if you're looking at one of these or have a passing interest in the old XR models. So until the next video folks, take care of yourselves and I'll see you soon. Ta-da.